Good boy. Go. All right, I want to introduce to you a way of breathing and a way of sensing and organizing your body, which is going to help you find more comfort, strength, a feeling of internal space, and ease. This could be used for seated meditation. It could be used for strength training. The effects of being able to sense your body in this way are just really nice posturally, and that has a lot of benefits. So the first thing we're going to do is start with the feet in this position. So feet flat on the ground, about 90 degrees between the thigh and the shin. The reason for starting here is it gives us a kind of neutral pelvic and rib relationship, rather than having a big arch in the lower back if the knees were down like this. This tends to encourage a shortening or a pulling of the hip flexors on the lower back, which can create more of a space under here. So if we want to have a slightly more connected front line and a spacious back body, which is the goal of this, then we're going to bring the feet up. That's why we do that. Now the next thing here is we want to be able to feel the space beneath the diaphragm, okay? So the diaphragm, in terms of the skeleton, is represented by the low lateral ribs and the baby ribs, so the base of our rib cage. Now this segment of the spine, the base of the thoracic spine, is what we want to really feel connected to the ground. And that's not the same thing as connecting your lower back to the ground. So what's often cued is people tell you to tuck your pelvis and connect your lower back to the ground and press it into the ground. You can see that when I do that, there's movement at the pelvis and in the lumbar spine, but there isn't necessarily this central core and diaphragmatic connection which holds my upper and lower body together. For me to access that, I actually have to press through this segment. And when I do that, now there's a global connection. Regardless of my pelvic tilt at the bottom, whether it's anterior or posterior, I still have that global connection, that sense of center between upper and lower body. So pressing through the ground at that level. Now if we take some deep breaths, we can feel there's a certain sense of pressurization, okay? So if we maintain that diaphragmatic connection in this part of the spine is pressing down, we can feel the back grows a little bit, we can feel that the rib cage widens a little bit, and we can feel a sense of containment in the front, okay? And that's called the zone of apposition. So when we have this containment in the front versus something more like this, what we're doing is we're creating a zone of apposition, and that is like putting the handle of a candy cane over. It's like wrapping the front ribs so that the air, instead of spilling forward or instead of emptying, we have this kind of washboard type feeling of connection through here beneath the solar plexus, okay? So that's the zone of apposition. And now if I breathe, you can see it's much easier for everything to grow and shrink in unison, okay? And it helps us create the abdominal pressure, the intra-abdominal pressure, which supports and presses out against our body from the inside, coupled with the wrapping of the muscles to create this balloon of stability, okay? So once we have that feeling, the next thing we're going to focus on is taking the feet just a little bit further away. And what we're going to do is drive the hips up slightly, okay? So by driving the hips up, all I'm doing is I'm lifting my butt cheeks a centimeter or two off the ground, okay? You could exaggerate a bit more, but it's not necessary to go really high. What we want to feel is this connection through this segment of the spine. We want to feel the hips coming up off the ground. And what that's going to do is create even more of a sense of containment through the front which allows some expansion and elongation through the back. So here, if I now have that central point pressing down through the ground, and I'm breathing into that, coupled with the glutes being on and the hips being active, I can really feel my back expanding when I breathe. And this is a very strong position. I'm very stable here. And so because my hips are on and they're working with my diaphragm, I have a central column of my body which is very well connected. Okay, so that's the feeling we're looking for. And this doesn't have to be an intense contraction at all. This can just be sort of 25%. It's just enough to lift the hips. It's not about messing with the hips. It's not about excessively tucking or arching. You just lift them, just straight up. And what you'll notice there is your exhalation tends to make lifting the hips easier. And your inhalation tends to then fill you up, okay? So exhalation goes with hip extension quite naturally. And inhalation would normally result in the ribs lifting or the belly opening, but because that's contained, the inhalation is going to grow us to the sides and through the back. So what I want you to now do in this position is begin to explore the butt breathing cue. So literally you're going to think breathing in through my nose and drawing the breath down to my butthole. Literally to your butthole. Think of the root chakra. Don't think of the tailbone, that's too far back. That will encourage a dropping or tucking. I want you to think butthole, perineum, right in the center of the base of your pelvic floor, okay? So when I breathe into that space, what I might notice is I kind of fill up more of the cavities of my body all the way down. And when you're breathing into the butthole area, what you tend to feel is a fullness. So the inhalation fills the sides and the back of the body. We can feel how the QLs, the kidney areas, the oblique areas, either side of the spine and the lower back, they get a sense of fullness. And I'm drawing that down, and that's offering stability. And now as I fill that breath, what's going to happen is it's going to fill the sides and the lower part, and it's going to start to rise. And I'm going to naturally allow myself to relax and expand into that inhale. And I'm going to get this feeling of the breath moving down and then spreading my body and then rising and filling my rib cage. So from the butthole, we expand the breath up into the armpits, okay? And once we have that sense of diaphragm connection, breathing to the butt, filling the armpits, that's a very full, very supportive breath. Okay, so if we continue to fill up, from the armpits, what you might notice is a sense of broadness through your shoulders. Like if you're just relaxing your hands here, what you might feel is that if you keep breathing in further, focusing on the side body, there's a sense of broadness. It's subtle, but you'll feel it broadening through the collarbones. Now with your head, I want you to allow your chin to be slightly up and your gaze to be slightly up too. We don't have to look at 90 degrees to the body. We can allow the chin to be slightly lifted, and that allows the head to feel sort of, if we were standing, like the ears were stacked over the center of the body. And from here, I want you to connect your tongue to the roof of your mouth, just behind your teeth, so that the perimeter of the outside of the tongue is inside of the line of the teeth, where the teeth meet the gums. And then I want you to create a little bit of suction through the tongue, okay? Like you're sucking it to the roof of your mouth, which means that if you were to release that or click it, it would be like this. Okay, so keep that suction as you breathe through your nose, relaxing the jaw, letting the head be where it is. And as you breathe in, that then creates a sense of connection which runs through the center line of the face, the midline of the face, and an awareness of your middle as you travel down through the spine. So what we're building here is an awareness of the middle of the body, an awareness of how everything connects from the mouth, from the eyes, all the way through the center, all the way through the spine, through the diaphragms, right to the pelvic floor. And having that deep midline awareness and spending time sensing that, just attending to, paying attention to that, is really going to help us to release and soften some of the excessive tone in the superficial muscles and around the outsides of the body. We're going to go from this body which feels like it's trying to find reference points and safety outside to a body which feels inside. Strength from the inside up. Okay, now what you can do here, make sure your lower back isn't gripping. We just want to be driving the hips forward and up. And you can start to flex to lift your toes up and point your heels, okay? So lifting the toes up and pointing the heels may change the sensation in the legs. What I want you to do then is just gently hug the heels towards you to find your hamstrings and to find the tops of your calves. If you can't feel that, you can pop the hips down for a second. You can take the feet further away, opening up the angle of the knee, and then you can still flex the toes again, lift the hips and create a little bit of a drag, okay? It's like you're gonna drag your body down using your hamstrings. And that's gonna really connect everything now. If you're spreading your toes, lifting your feet, you're connecting through the hamstrings, it'll be quite intensive. The hips are lifted, you're breathing. Now we're very connected through the whole body. And we're feeling our back. So this is quite powerful. This is good training. And now what we wanna have here is the ability to bring the elbows down into the ground as if we're gonna row the ground. We're not gonna pull too hard yet, we're just gonna feel the elbows connecting to the ground, driving through the ground a little bit while also feeling a nice firm connection through the diaphragm level of the rib cage. Okay, so we're keeping these contractions on enough to know that we're doing them, but we're not trying to cook ourselves quickly. And then from here, with the tongue suction to the roof of your mouth, holding that row feeling and feeling your back grow into the floor, what we're gonna do is lift the head, keeping the gaze looking slightly up. Okay, now we're connecting from the roof of the mouth, through the tongue, the deep midline, the neck, looking slightly up, taking deep breaths. And we have this connection through the entire body. Okay, now you can explore holding that, breathing through that, holding the shape but minimizing excessive muscle tone. Or what you can do is take rests and alternate for, let's say, 3 breaths holding, 3 breaths resting. You can decide how long you want to practice that for, but any amount of practice is going to be helpful. And really what you're doing is resetting your body's position and the way it operates and breathes, sensing the spine because of the tactile feedback of the ground, learning to connect with your midline, and then if you do something like add a sandbag on top of that, weighting you down, that'll give you even more sensory feedback to breathe against. And then if you take this to sitting, usually I would elevate my hips above my knees slightly, but let's say you're sitting as if in meditation, you can kind of save that feeling of the setup you had, and it feels very stable and very strong but relaxed. If you then apply that into your training, like your lifting, your standing practices for Qigong or Tai Chi, if you consider it when you're running, when you're swimming, if you're wrestling or grappling, it's a very well-organized central position to move from and to move out of. And the level of safety that creates for your body and the level of capacity it creates when you're really, really familiar with these actions can bring you an ease and a trust in yourself, which you don't necessarily have if you don't know how to connect your body like this. So I want you to practice this one. I want you to keep it simple. If anything, you can just add a sandbag. You could potentially, if you wanted to, explore some tennis balls under the armpits to hug the midline as you row the ground. What you could also do is put something between the thighs to explore connecting through the thighs too. And what we're doing then is we're really just having this light hug of the body, sensing the midline, breathing, and staying in a realm of relaxation where we can actually feel, sense, and integrate, rather than trying to go so hard that we're fighting ourselves and stressing ourselves out. Okay? Enjoy.